Ah, the 90s, the decade that gave us flannel shirts, Crystal Pepsi, Dan Cortez, and some of the greatest comedies ever made. Here now are the 10 best. Ow! The 90s saw the emergence of the Farrelly brothers, a directing duo with, let's face it, a less than stellar filmography. Surprisingly though, the Farrellys are also responsible for not one, but two of the decade's best comedies. Beginning with the 1998 rom-com, There's Something About Mary. The movie follows Ted, a grown man who's still obsessed with his old high school crush. When he decides to rekindle their flame, Ted discovers that Mary now has no shortage of suitors chasing her affections.
I'm tired of talking about stalkers. Let's talk about you.
Hilariously irreverent and surprisingly violent, There's Something About Mary is the perfect example of a gross-out comedy done right. This movie isn't all about disgusting juvenile humor, though there's plenty of it. It's also a sardonic and cutting satire that, unlike so many lesser comedies, actually has something to say. Not only that, but There's Something About Mary is also the movie that made Ben Stiller a comedy legend, and it remains Cameron Diaz's highest-grossing live-action film to this very day. Score one for the Farrelly brothers.
It's Friday, you ain't got no job, and you ain't got shit to do.
Hip-hop artists becoming movie stars was a whole thing during the early 90s. Tupac Shakur starred in Juice and Poetic Justice, for example, while Ice-T appeared in New Jack City with Wesley Snipes. And 1997 saw the release of Friday, a comedy starring Ice Cube and directed by future Fast and the Furious director F. Gary Gray. Set in South Central LA, Friday serves as something of a rebuke to the grittier films in the so-called hood genre. This is more of a slice-of-life comedy centered on the daily trials and tribulations of a group of inner-city friends. Ice Cube and Chris Tucker play a pair of down-on-their-luck friends named Craig and Smokey, who owe a local drug dealer a whole lot of money.
Damn!
Friday is the kind of movie that makes Dazed and Confused look quaint by comparison. A mix of slapstick, farce, and outright parody, the movie offers not only laughs aplenty, but also some stinging social commentary. Although not as well remembered today, Friday actually spawned a whole franchise, as the movie got 2 sequels and even an animated spin-off. And in more recent years, the original has found its place as something of a cultural meme, as it spawned a saying that has since become iconic among the sarcastic.
Bye, Felicia.
Arguably one of the best spoof movies of all time, Galaxy Quest arrived at the height of the parody boom in the 90s. As a big-budget sci-fi adventure though, Galaxy Quest transcended the spoof genre, helped along by an all-star cast of greats giving it everything they've got.
By Grabthar's hammer. What a savings.
Part loving homage, part outright mockery, Galaxy Quest is a lampoon of Star Trek. Not just the show itself, but also the fandom as a whole. The film follows the cast of a cult classic sci-fi TV show who are recruited by aliens to join their fight against a band of warmongering tyrants. Tim Allen leads the show as washed-up, pompous Jason Nesmith, who finds himself in over his head as he leads an interstellar battle to defend the galaxy.
No, never give up, never surrender.
Though you might expect the humor of Galaxy Quest to be lost on non-Trekkies, that's not the case at all. The movie's sharp-witted script and impeccable comedic performances make it a must-watch comedy for pretty much anybody. And if you do like Star Trek, well, you're gonna have an absolute blast with this one.
Allow myself to introduce myself.
Released in 1997, Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery is essentially one long joke about the absurdity of the spy genre, yet it's also a hilarious and original comedy in its own right.
Yeah, baby! Yeah.
An obvious pastiche of the James Bond franchise, Austin Powers follows the exploits of a 60s-era English secret agent who is cryogenically frozen to safeguard the world from his arch-nemesis Dr. Evil. Awakened in the late 1990s, Austin must cope with the culture shock while facing off against his oldest and most dangerous foe. Obviously, Myers is an absolute sensation in the dual roles of Austin Powers and Dr. Evil, delivering one-liners and catchphrases that have since become iconic. The film is also filled with so many sight gags and fourth-wall breaking jokes that it takes multiple viewings to catch them all. Above all though, it's the hilarious ensemble cast that really takes International Man of Mystery to another level.
Scott!
Followed by a pair of sequels released in the 2000s, the Austin Powers series succeeded where so many other parodies have failed, and it all began with this comedy classic. There's long been talk of a fourth movie too, but will it ever happen? We can only hope.
Okay, I still live with my parents, which I admit is both bogus and sad. But at least I've got an amazing cable access show, and I still know how to party.
Austin Powers wasn't the first of the Mike Myers 90s classics. Far from it. A year earlier, Myers had kicked off his domination of the decade's comedy scene with Wayne's World, a movie adapted from his Saturday Night Live sketch of the same name. Together, Myers and Dana Carvey reprised their roles as Wayne and Garth, a pair of bumbling wannabe rock stars who host a public access TV variety show from their parents' basement. In the film, Myers and Carvey are joined by Rob Lowe's Benjamin Cain, a slick big city TV producer who wants to take their show to a major national TV network. The dim-witted duo are happy to bask in the limelight, but before long they find themselves forced to fight the network as executives begin meddling with the show. While many movies have been adapted from SNL skits, most of them failed to deliver, and Wayne's World is easily the best of them all. Somehow able to sustain a one-note joke over a feature-length runtime, Myers and Carvey's gimmick plays better on the big screen thanks to the movie's strong supporting cast and 80s-style caper story. A bigger budget allowed for bigger gags too, including a stinging product placement joke that's even funnier today than it was in 1992.
Contract or no, I will not bow to any sponsor.
Part sci-fi action, part slapstick comedy, Men in Black sees Will Smith take on the role of James Edwards, a reckless, street-smart NYPD detective who joins the government's most shadowy intelligence agency, the Men in Black.
I make this look good.
Tasked with protecting humanity from our extraterrestrial neighbors, Agent J and his grizzled mentor, Agent K, embark on a journey to track down and recover a missing galaxy. Men in Black spawned a trio of sequels and an animated spin-off, but none of those follow-ups ever lived up to the promise of the original. Part of what makes the first film work so well is that it never goes too far with its jokes. Men in Black is more grounded than you'd expect for a comedy about a group of earthbound space cops, as the film allows the sheer absurdity of the story to do most of the heavy lifting. And of course, the dazzling chemistry between Smith and Tommy Lee Jones doesn't exactly hurt either. It's a real shame that the rest of the Men in Black franchise never ever hit the heights of the first movie, because Smith, Jones, and director Barry Sonnenfeld captured lightning in a bottle with this one.
Hey, want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
Jim Carrey took on some of his most memorable roles in the 90s, many of which showcased his astonishing range as an actor. Though he later starred in more dramatic movies, 1994 was all comedies with not one, not two, but three fan favorites released that calendar year. And while The Mask and Ace Ventura: Pet Detective deserved the recognition they so often received, it was Dumb and Dumber that marked Carey's best effort in 1994. Helmed by first-time director Peter Farrelly and co-written by Bobby Farrelly, Dumb and Dumber saw Carey and Jeff Daniels play a pair of not-so-bright roommates who go on a cross-country road trip to return a woman's lost briefcase. This good deed winds up having disastrous consequences, however, as the contents of the briefcase turn out to be a stash of money intended to pay off a ransom. As the name suggests, Dumb and Dumber isn't exactly filled with highbrow humor. Instead, the film is packed to the gills with slapstick shenanigans and crass bottom-feeding jokes. And sure, that might not sound like the recipe for one of the decade's best comedy offerings, but the electric chemistry between Carey and Daniels makes Dumb and Dumber far more than the sum of its parts.
What would you say you do here?
Workplace comedies are a dime a dozen on television, but they're not quite so common in Hollywood, although that might be because they've already been perfected. Yes, when it comes to the movies, Office Space might well be the best workplace comedy of all time.
I'm gonna need you to go ahead and come in tomorrow.
Set at a fictional office of a tech company, the film follows Peter Gibbons, an anonymous button masher who's fed up with his soul-sucking desk job. With no hope of escape, Peter is pushed to his breaking point by the mundanity and pointlessness of his life. Yet at the same time, he finds himself somehow rising up the corporate ladder. Before long, Peter decides to rebel against the office by launching a scheme to steal funds from his employer. A scathing critique of American corporate culture, Office Space is probably one of the most quotable comedies of the decade.
Uh-oh. Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
Thanks to its bumbling cast of characters, its hugely relatable setting, and a snappy, clever script, Office Space has since become beloved as a timeless 90s classic. Enduring praise from audiences serves as a testament to the film's staying power, and even years later, it remains a cutting and hilarious admonishment of the misery of corporate America. Stop me if you've heard this one before. A group of innocent and unsuspecting characters get caught up in criminal dealings, and comedy ensues. Yes, this is a done-to-death trope in Hollywood. Heck, Fargo practically built a whole franchise around it. But arguably no film before or since has pulled off the idea quite as well as The Big Lebowski. More than just a great comedy, this may also be one of the best movies of the decade, period. The Big Lebowski is about a case of mistaken identity that lands perpetual stoner Jeffrey Lebowski in hot water with a gang of criminals. Though he tries to set the record straight, he and his bowling buddies Walter and Donnie are along for the ride on a tale of kidnappings, designer rugs, and rampaging nihilists. Though it's without a doubt one of the best comedies of the decade, The Big Lebowski wasn't actually as popular upon its release as its legacy might have you believe. The film's offbeat nature wasn't fully appreciated by critics at the time, though time has led to a universal reappraisal of its merits. Today, The Big Lebowski is seen as one of the strongest entries in the Coen brothers' storied filmography, and an all-time comedy great. If you're a fan of 90s comedies, it'll come as no surprise that Groundhog Day sits in our top spot.
It's February 2nd. Groundhog Day.
A comedy with a decidedly fantastical twist, Groundhog Day blends time travel with romantic comedy and a lead performance that only Bill Murray could pull off. Murray plays Phil Connors, a cynical and pompous weatherman tasked with covering the annual Groundhog Day festivities in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania.
It's February 2nd. Groundhog Day.
But when a freak snowstorm strikes the town, Connors finds himself stranded in the rural community he despises. When he wakes up the next morning, things go from bad to worse as he realizes he's being forced to relive the same day over and over.
It's February 2nd. Groundhog Day.
Now trapped in a never-ending nightmare, Connors goes on a personal journey of self-discovery while falling in love with his new producer. Though it might sound more like an episode of The Twilight Zone than a classic comedy, Groundhog Day dives headfirst into the most absurd aspects of time travel while also balancing a heartfelt story of love and loss. It's not a bold claim to call Groundhog Day a nearly perfect comedy. Every joke lands, the story is genuinely touching, and Murray himself is at his very best, delivering what may be his most iconic role. What else could you possibly want from a classic 90s comedy?
It's February 2nd. Groundhog Day.